The true story of the Titanic, fire and ice. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, the unsinkable giant ship suffered a catastrophic accident that would lead to its complete sinking just 3 hours later. By 2:20 a.m. on April 15, the largest ship of its time had sunk into the icy waters of the Atlantic. As the Titanic sank to its watery grave, it claimed over 1,500 lives, more than 2/3 of those on board. It was believed that an iceberg caused this disaster that claimed so many lives, or at least that's what we were led to believe. However, new evidence has changed scientific theories. In this article, we will reveal the whole truth that has been buried in the waters for over a century. A massive structure and cost. Approximately 269 meters long, 28 meters wide, and 53 meters high, this massive structure had a volume of 46,328 tons, large enough to walk for miles on the deck of the Titanic. The construction of the funnels alone took more than 2 weeks. Each chimney weighed 60 tons and rose approximately 25 meters above the deck. Such impressive chimneys were necessary to expel 100 tons of soot and ash per day without it falling on the passengers. However, surprisingly, the fourth chimney was fake and was only installed at a 30-degree angle for ventilation and aesthetic integrity. The cost of this engineering marvel amounted to $7.5 million. Taking inflation into account, this figure is equivalent to approximately $166 million in 2016 dollars. What is surprising is that the production cost of the world-famous 1997 film Titanic was $200 million. In other words, making the film was more expensive than building the ship. The construction process and initial losses. Harlan and Wolff Shipyard hired 3,000 workers to build the ship. Even with a large workforce working 6 days a week starting at 6 a.m., it took 26 months to complete this monumental task. It was difficult and dangerous work. Safety standards at the time were not what they are today. Sadly, 8 workers died and 246 were injured during construction. New theory. Fire. It is truly difficult to believe that such a complex mechanism sank simply because of an iceberg. New evidence suggests that the cause of the disaster may have been not just ice, but also fire. Journalist Senan Maloney has been researching the fate of the Titanic for 30 years. While examining photographs of the ship's hull taken before it was launched, he noticed a large black stain. This stain was the trace of a fire that started in the coal bunker and burned internally for weeks. Engineers note that under these conditions, high heat could easily weaken the metal and reduce its strength by 75%. Therefore, when the iceberg struck the ship's side, the weakened metal broke much more easily. This was just one link in the tragic what-ifs. They knew the ship should not have set sail with this deadly fire. However, canceling the voyage would have meant bankruptcy for the ship owners. At that time, miners across England were on strike, so there was not enough coal for the Titanic. But the tickets had already been sold, and everyone wanted to travel on the largest ship ever built by man. Other ship voyages were canceled, and the Titanic owners gathered all the coal they could find. To hide the truth, the ship was moored in the harbor with the burnt side facing the sea. Thus, the passengers could not see that black mark. Luxury and splendor. And so the journey began. The interior decoration of the Titanic was modeled after the Ritz Hotel in London. The error "Yomratakai Etsote" in the text has been corrected. The grand staircase descended to 7 of the ship's 10 decks. It was decorated with oak panels, bronze angel statues, and elegant chandeliers. First-class passengers had access to a heated swimming pool, Turkish bath, gym, squash court, and beauty salon. Stylists could be called upon to help ladies prepare for dinner. There was even a newspaper dedicated to the ship called the Atlantic Daily Bulletin. There was also a special area for first-class passengers' dogs. Pets were fed, walked, and even trained. The meals were an event in themselves. First-class meals consisted of 13 courses, each with its own wine. These feasts lasted for hours. The ship carried 1,500 bottles of wine, 20,000 bottles of beer, and 8,000 cigars. Forgotten binoculars and a chain of negligence. But look at that. There were no binoculars on the ship. Why is this worth mentioning? Because sonar systems did not exist at that time. Lookouts used binoculars to detect dangers ahead of ships. The binoculars on the Titanic were locked in a special cabinet. Second Officer David Blair, who had the key to the cabinet, had been relieved of his duties at the last minute. He was in such a hurry to leave the ship that he forgot to give the key to his replacement. This fatal oversight was only discovered 3 days after the ship set sail. If the lookouts had had binoculars, they could have spotted the iceberg earlier and had enough time to avoid the collision. Furthermore, if the ship had not exceeded its speed limit, it might have been saved. In order to stay ahead of schedule and break the record, the ship was traveling at a speed higher than it was designed for. Lifeboat shortage and canceled drills. Another potential cause of the disaster concerned the lifeboats. The Titanic needed approximately 60 lifeboats to accommodate everyone on board. Chief designer Alexander Carlisle planned to equip the ship with 48 lifeboats, but the number was eventually reduced to 20. This reduction was made purely for aesthetic reasons, as 48 lifeboats would have made the deck look too crowded. These 20 boats could only save 1/3 of the people on board. Surprisingly, according to the laws of the time, the number of lifeboats was based on the tonnage of the ship, not the number of passengers. Technically, this deficiency was legal. Worse still, emergency drills were never conducted. Captain Edward John Smith canceled the drill scheduled for the morning of the day the Titanic sank. No one knows the reason for his decision, especially since nearby ships had warned of ice in the water. Perhaps because this drill was not conducted, it took the crew half an hour to lower the lifeboats instead of the standard 10 minutes. Only 27 passengers boarded the first lifeboat, which had a capacity for 65 people. This was because, at first, people refused to leave the ship, believing they were safe on the unsinkable vessel. The invisible ship and the mirage effect. As the Titanic sank, the crew fired distress flares. A ship named SS Californian was sailing nearby, but ignored the distress flares. The captain of the Californian lost his job after this fact came to light, but modern researchers believe the captain may have been innocent. The reason the signals from the Titanic went unnoticed may have been light refraction. When cold air layers remain beneath warm air layers, a thermal inversion occurs. This causes light to refract differently than normal and creates mirages. Historian Tim Moulton suggests that atmospheric conditions that night created a mirage, which hid the iceberg from the lookouts and caused the Californian to misinterpret the Titanic's lights. This tragic chain of coincidences, fire, ice, negligence, or natural events, whatever the cause, the Titanic forever changed scientists' theories and maritime history. If you liked this video, I'll reveal the secret of the Mariana Trench if this video gets 1,000 likes.